My name is Emily. I was just 19 when I met Adam. He was a senior at the university I just started attending, and I was totally smitten. Adam had this confidence that was magnetic. He seemed like someone who knew exactly what he wanted in life. He made me feel like the most important person in the room, and I fell hard for him. Back then, everything about our relationship felt like a fairy tale. He was successful, driven, and passionate about his family's business, which he had left school to help run. He'd promised me that he would return to finish his degree once things were settled with his family's company. I believed him, and in my heart it made him seem more grounded, like someone with real priorities. I had never been in a serious relationship before, and I was utterly convinced that this was it, the one. For the next 2 years, Adam and I talked about our future, our careers, where we'd live, how we'd travel the world. We even joked about getting married one day. I introduced him to my family after about a year of dating, wanting them to see how great he was. My parents, as usual, were cautious, but they liked him. My mom, ever the perfectionist, would mention small things she didn't like how he wasn't as polished as some of the other people in our social circle, but my dad, surprisingly, really respected him. Adam had helped with their family business, and my brother, who was a little younger than me, thought he was cool. But it was my younger sister, Lily, who I didn't really notice. At the time, she was 18, bright-eyed and innocent, and she adored Adam. I didn't think much of it. After all, who wouldn't be a little impressed by someone older and more experienced? Lily started asking him a lot of questions whenever he came over. What did he study in school? What was his favorite music? Could he help her with a school project? It seemed innocent enough. But looking back, there were red flags everywhere. Months passed, and things started to get strange. Adam would take more frequent trips back to his hometown, usually for the weekend. He said he was helping his dad with the business, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He always made me feel like I was the priority, that we were building something together. But those trips were becoming more frequent, and I started to feel like something was off. I didn't have any concrete evidence, just a nagging feeling, but I shoved it aside. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Thursday just like any other. I was sitting on the couch in our apartment, flipping through some notes for my upcoming exam when Lily knocked on the door. She was crying, her face flushed and tear-streaked. At first I thought something had happened. An accident, a fight at school, anything. But what she said next left me breathless. "I'm pregnant," she sobbed, barely able to get the words out. "And Adam is the father." I was in shock. I didn't understand. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Lily was my baby sister. How could this happen? How could he, the man I had loved, betray me like this? As I stood there trying to process what she was saying, she went on, telling me how it had started months ago. Adam had been visiting her when I wasn't around. It wasn't supposed to happen, she kept saying, but it did. I didn't know whether to scream or collapse. How could my sister do this to me? And Adam? He didn't even try to deny it when I confronted him. His response was cold, distant. "It's complicated," he said. Complicated? No. This wasn't complicated. This was betrayal, the worst kind, the kind you never saw coming. The next few days were a blur of anger, confusion, and disbelief. But what hurt the most wasn't just that my boyfriend and sister had done this behind my back. It was how my mom reacted. You'd think that a mother would protect her daughter, right? Especially when that daughter was the victim. But no. My mom, in her typical fashion, was more concerned about appearances, about the family's reputation. Her first reaction wasn't to console me. It wasn't to tear into Adam or Lily for what they had done. It was, "We can't let this get out. We need to fix this. We have to protect the family name." And that's when she came up with her solution. A shotgun wedding. Lily, barely 19, was going to marry Adam, the man who had been in a relationship with me for 2 years. And my mother thought this was the best course of action to make it right. The thought of them walking down the aisle playing happy family was too much for me. I couldn't be a part of that. That night I left. I packed a bag, got into my car, and just drove. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house with my mother enabling everything, my sister playing the victim, and Adam, the man I had trusted, just walking away from me without a second thought. I didn't just walk out. I stormed out like there was a fire behind me. And in a way there was. My whole world was on fire and I couldn't save it. I didn't just walk out of that house that night. I stormed out. It wasn't a calm, thoughtful decision. It was rage, grief, and disbelief all packed into one. I had been betrayed by the one person I trusted with everything. Adam, the guy I thought I would marry one day. And by my sister, the person I'd grown up with, my family. I could hardly breathe, let alone think straight. I don't know how long I drove, but I ended up at my apartment. Alone. I slammed the door behind me and collapsed onto the couch. For a moment I was just numb. Then the anger hit me like a wave. I screamed into a pillow. I threw things, anything to get the fury out of my system. Nothing made it better. Nothing could take away the feeling of betrayal. It wasn't just the betrayal itself. It was how they acted afterward, like nothing had happened, like I didn't matter. I didn't hear from Adam for a couple of days after everything went down, and honestly I didn't care. What could he possibly say? Sorry? That didn't even begin to cover it. And when my mom finally called me, I knew what to expect. You need to be mature about this, she said, her voice tight like she was speaking to a child. Mature? I almost laughed. Are you kidding me? She didn't even understand. I wasn't mad because of a petty family argument. I wasn't mad because I wasn't invited to a dinner or something trivial. No, I was furious because my own mother couldn't see the damage that had been done to me. Sweetie, she continued, this is a hard situation, but you can't act like this. We're family and we need to stick together. Your sister is pregnant, and we need to do what's best for the baby. That's when I lost it. The baby? This wasn't about the baby. This was about her turning her back on me to fix the image of our family. This was about my sister and my boyfriend making decisions behind my back, and her choosing to protect them instead of me. But I didn't get a chance to speak. She was already on to her next point. I know this is hard for you, she said, her tone soft now. But think about the future. The wedding, this could all be behind us. We can make this work. That's when I realized how messed up everything had become. My mom, the woman who was supposed to be my protector, was talking about a shotgun wedding like it was a quick fix to a family PR crisis. She wasn't asking for my feelings. She wasn't concerned about how I was doing. She was concerned about appearances. I hung up. And for the next few days I shut everyone out. I blocked my mom's number. I stopped answering texts from my sister. And I ignored calls from family members who thought they could talk some sense into me. My little brother Max was the only one who stuck by me. He was 20, still living at home, and saw the whole thing unfold. He wasn't afraid to call it like he saw it. They're nuts, he said one evening after I vented to him on the phone. Mom's acting like this is some Jane Austen novel, and Dad's just sitting there letting it happen. I don't know how you're dealing with it, but I'm here for you. His words meant the world to me. At least I wasn't entirely alone. But the isolation was brutal. My own family, my blood, had sided with the people who betrayed me. My mom, my sister, even my dad, who had done nothing to stop it. They all wanted me to forgive, to move on like nothing had happened. And I just couldn't. I couldn't let that go. I couldn't forget that they'd all turned their backs on me for the sake of a wedding. I was done. Done with trying to be the good daughter. Done with trying to be the perfect sister. Done with all of them. But when I found out about the inheritance, that was when I really knew how deep the betrayal ran. My grandparents had left me a decent chunk of money, half of their estate to be specific. It was going to help me pay off student loans, maybe even give me a little freedom to take a step back and think about what I wanted to do with my life. But when my mom mentioned it in passing one afternoon, I realized that half of my inheritance wasn't going to me at all. It was going toward funding their shotgun wedding and the life they were building. You should think about the baby, my mom said, like she was making a reasonable suggestion. This will help them get started. Help them get started? My heart stopped. That money I'd been counting on to help rebuild my life after everything that had happened, was being used to cover for their lies. That's when I snapped. I wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. If my family wanted to hide their secrets, then so be it. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat. I wasn't going to pretend to be happy about a situation that had shattered everything I'd ever believed in. So I went public. I opened Facebook and started writing. I told the world everything. How Adam had been cheating on me with my sister for months. How my mother had been planning this wedding to save face. And how half of my inheritance was being used to fund it all. I even included screenshots of the texts Adam had sent me, where he admitted that he was torn between me and Lily but ultimately chose her. The post went viral. My phone buzzed nonstop, people reaching out in support, some even expressing their disbelief at what had happened. The reaction was intense. Some of my family members tried to defend Lily and Adam, calling me cruel and heartless for airing our dirty laundry. One relative even told me, "You're better than this." Better than this? The truth is always better than lies. Better than pretending everything is fine when it's clearly not. Better than staying silent when your own family is destroying you from the inside out. My mom wasn't pleased, to say the least. She left me a voicemail so angry, I thought the phone might explode. She called me jealous, bitter, and ungrateful. The ungrateful part nearly made me laugh. Like I should be grateful that she was robbing me blind and throwing me under the bus to cover for a cheating boyfriend and a sister who had no problem betraying me. The wedding came and went. I didn't attend. I couldn't. The idea of sitting through that ceremony, pretending everything was okay, made my skin crawl. But my absence didn't go unnoticed. Mom spun the story to everyone who would listen. She told people I didn't come to the wedding because I was jealous. Jealous? Of my sister? Who'd taken everything from me. The irony was unbearable. And some people bought it. They actually believed that my heartbreak and fury were just petty jealousy. The only person who stood by me was Max. He didn't try to gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. He didn't blame me for the mess that was our family. He was just there, steadfast, supportive, and real. After the wedding, I tried to move on. I focused on my work, rebuilt my life, and started to breathe again. But the ghosts of my family lingered. And it wasn't over yet. When I found out my dad had passed, I was empty. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't feel anything. It's not that I didn't care. It's that I had buried my emotions so deep after everything with Adam, Lily, and my mom that grief didn't even feel real anymore. My relationship with Dad had been strained for years, especially after he let my mom take over everything. He'd been distant, passive, just letting her call the shots. So when I got the news from Max, my first reaction was complete numbness. Max didn't ask me if I wanted to come to the funeral. He just told me flat out, "I think you should be there. It's for you, not for them." That got me thinking. I hadn't seen Dad in over a year. The last time we spoke was awkward at best. But he was still my father. I'd never get a chance to have any kind of real closure with him if I stayed away. I didn't know if I could bring myself to forgive him, but I figured going to the funeral was the least I could do. So I showed up, more out of obligation than anything else. The service was a mess. It felt like everyone was there to make themselves look good, to prove they were family, in the eyes of society, instead of actually mourning. My mom was front and center, sobbing so theatrically that I was convinced she was trying to land a role in a soap opera. She looked like she was auditioning for Best Dramatic Performance, clutching a tissue and shaking her head in disbelief like she had no idea why he was gone. Lily was sitting beside her, visibly pregnant again, of course, and Adam was standing awkwardly behind them, trying to blend into the background. The whole scene was as fake as it could be, like something out of a bad reality TV show. I stayed toward the back, far enough away that I wouldn't have to deal with anyone's whispers or judgmental stares. I wasn't there to make nice with the family or put on a show. I was there to say goodbye to a man I had once loved, even if he didn't deserve that love anymore. Max stood beside me the whole time, just quietly offering me his support. But then came the part one hadn't prepared for, the will reading. Max had heard from our uncle that Dad might have done right by me in the end, so I decided to stick around for it. I wasn't expecting much, honestly. I figured that my mom and Lily would end up with most of what he had, and I'd be left with crumbs. But curiosity got the best of me. The lawyer started reading Dad's will. The legal jargon was enough to put anyone to sleep, but when it finally got to the important part, I felt my heart stop. 40% of Mr. Evans' estate will go to Emily Evans, the lawyer said. The remainder will be split between Mrs. Evans and Max Evans. A small trust has been set up for Lily's children. For a second, I didn't even process the words. My mind was spinning. I didn't expect anything from him, especially after everything that had happened. But here it was. Dad had left me 40% of his estate. It was more than I could have ever imagined. I looked over at Lily. Her face twisted into a look of pure rage. She went pale then red, her eyes bulging like she was about to explode. She was furious. But I didn't care. She didn't deserve a single cent. Not after everything she'd done. The lawyer handed me an envelope. It was sealed, and it had my dad's handwriting on it. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a short letter. Emily. It started, and I had to swallow hard just to get through it. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed me. I should have stood up for you, and I regret that. I've always admired your strength and the way you've handled yourself. You've always done what was right even when it was hard. You've earned this. I hope this helps you start fresh. I felt a knot in my throat. I had been so angry at him for so long. So disappointed. But reading his words finally, it was like all the years of pain came rushing back. He had acknowledged me. After everything he had seen me. He hadn't been perfect, but in his own way he had tried to make it right. Of course, that wasn't the end of it. Lily lost her mind when she realized she wasn't getting anything from Dad. She shouted, "This is bullshit." He wouldn't have wanted her to have more than me. The lawyer calmly explained that Dad's wishes had been legally documented and notarized, but Lily wasn't having it. She started yelling at me, calling me selfish and unfair. It was the same old story with her. Everything is about her. Max and I just stayed silent, letting her throw her tantrum. After a few minutes she stormed out, and I didn't bother to chase after her. Let her scream. Let her throw her fits. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. But the chaos didn't end there. Mom, ever the manipulator, pulled me aside later, trying to guilt-trip me into giving up my share. "You don't even need the money," she said, her voice full of false sweetness. "Think about Lily and the kids. They need this. You're being so heartless." I stared at her, stunned for a moment. "How can you be so blind?" I asked. "She made her choices. Let her deal with the consequences." Mom's expression was stone cold, but she didn't argue. She knew it was over. She just couldn't accept it. The whole situation was a mess. But somehow I had finally gotten what was mine, even if it felt bittersweet. The lawyer confirmed that Lily had no legal grounds to contest the will, and her threats to take it to court quickly fizzled out. It felt like a victory, but it wasn't the closure I was hoping for. Not really. Lily wasn't done, though. A few weeks later, I started getting angry texts and voicemails from her. She was furious. But it didn't stop there. One morning I went to leave for work, only to find my car tires slashed. I was livid. I called the cops and sure enough, there was a camera showing Lily leaving my apartment building, looking like she was in a hurry. When the police questioned her, she didn't even try to deny it. "I was hormonal and desperate," she said, like that was supposed to excuse everything. She ended up with a hefty fine and a restraining order, but of course my mother didn't see it that way. She praised Lily for taking the blame and protecting Adam from any legal trouble. Apparently, Adam had been in on it too but had a cleaner record, so he managed to escape any consequences. My family was beyond broken at this point, and nothing seemed like it would ever fix it. As for me, I wasn't about to let them drag me back into their toxic mess. I had made my peace with the situation. I had gotten the justice I needed, even if it wasn't exactly what I had imagined. My life was moving forward, but I couldn't stop wondering if they'd ever really face the consequences of their actions. Would they ever realize how much damage they had done? And if they did, would it even matter? The weeks after the will reading felt like a blur. It was as if my life had been split into two realities, before and after the will. Before, I was still tangled up in my family's mess, still trying to hold on to some kind of hope that things would get better, even though deep down I knew they never would. After I was starting to breathe again. I wasn't living for anyone else. I wasn't doing anything to please anyone. I was doing it for me. And that was both terrifying and liberating. I'd always been the one who tried to fix things. I'd always tried to smooth over the chaos, to keep the peace, even when there was no peace to be found. But the truth was there was no fixing my family. They were broken, and they weren't interested in healing. Not really. They just wanted to drag everyone down into their dysfunction. I was done trying to make it work. Max had been a constant through all of this. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed him until everything came crashing down. He was the one who showed up when I needed someone to just be there, without any expectations. No drama. No judgment. He never pressured me to take sides or talk about the past. He just let me be. And that was everything I needed. We started doing little things together, like grabbing coffee on Saturday mornings or going for walks in the park. Simple things, but they gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Slowly, I started to believe that maybe I could have a life without all the baggage. Maybe there was something out there for me beyond the endless cycle of family drama. But letting go was harder than I expected. I'd go a few days without hearing from Lily or Mom, and for a while that felt like freedom. Then, out of nowhere, I'd get a text from Lily, or my mom would show up at my door, her eyes wide with that same desperation she always had. "Emily, please," my mom would say, her voice trembling. "You know I never meant for any of this to happen. We're family. We need each other." I couldn't keep listening to the same old lines. I knew her game now. She didn't want me, she wanted what I had. And that was something I was never going to give up. I remember one night, just after Mom had come by again, I sat down with Max in my apartment. I was on the verge of tears, frustrated and confused. I could hear my mom's voice echoing in my head, guilt-tripping me, making me feel like I was the one in the wrong for wanting peace. "I don't know how to make them stop," I told Max, my voice cracking. Max didn't say anything for a while. He just sat there watching me like he was waiting for me to work it out. Then finally he spoke. "You can't make them stop, Em," he said quietly. "They're always going to do this. They'll always come at you with the guilt trips and the drama. But you don't have to take it anymore. You don't have to carry their baggage. You're not responsible for them." Those words hit me like a wave. I had spent so much of my life believing that I was somehow responsible for fixing things, for making the family whole again. But Max was right. I couldn't do it. Not anymore. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long while I felt a spark of hope. There was a way out. There was a life waiting for me, outside of the mess. I didn't just have to survive anymore. I could actually live. The first real step toward that freedom came when I finally decided to change my number. I'd been avoiding phone calls and texts for weeks, but there was always that nagging feeling that if I didn't answer, something worse would happen. But I was tired. I was tired of being their emotional punching bag, tired of carrying their guilt and their anger. So I made the call to my provider, changed my number, and let go of all the old contacts. It felt like cutting the last string that was tying me to the chaos. The next few months were a mix of peace and restlessness. At first, the quiet felt strange. My phone wasn't buzzing every 5 minutes, and there was no drama looming over me like a storm cloud. I was free to focus on my work, my own growth. But still, there was this itch in the back of my mind. What were they doing? Were they angry? Would they ever really let me go? Then came the breakthrough, the moment I realized I didn't care anymore. I was at the park one evening, walking alone, just letting my mind wander. The sky was painted in shades of purple and orange as the sun dipped below the horizon. I had my earbuds in, listening to an old favorite song, when I noticed something. The weight I'd been carrying for so long was gone. For the first time in years, I felt light. I wasn't holding on to anyone's expectations, no one's anger or guilt or manipulation. I was just me, moving through the world on my own terms. I had no idea where life was going to take me next. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't scared. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting for something to explode. The truth is, I don't know what comes next. I don't know if I'll ever fully heal from the years of manipulation and betrayal. But I do know one thing. I'm not going to let my past control my future. I've spent too long trying to fix other people, too long trying to make things work with people who didn't deserve my energy. Now I'm learning to put myself first. Max has been there through it all, and I'm starting to see him differently, not as just my brother, but as the person who helped me realize that I could be whole without my family's approval. I don't need them. I've got me. And that's enough.